Greetings, developers, metaverse architects, and hackathon participants. So glad to be here with you again today. Once again, coming to you remote for this amazing hackathon event. This week, I'm here with David, our Web3 gaming development tech lead. David is one of my favorite people to work with on the team because he's always building new and exciting ideas that have to do with NFTs and Web3 gaming and things that maybe other people haven't even tried yet. I'm going to let David take the center stage here in a second, but just to give you one tidbit about him, he once told me that he likes developing games more than he likes playing them. So he's the perfect person for us to learn from today while we're working to improve our own dApps and really take charge of our position in this hackathon. Welcome to the stage, David.
Thank you, Philip. Thanks for the introduction. Hello, everyone. I am David, coming to you from the Moralis Web3 Gaming Squad. And I'm going to do things a little bit differently than I've done in previous live streams. So a lot of times when I'm giving these presentations, I'm coming in at the beginning of the hackathon, and we're going to discuss how to get going. Well, since everyone's already currently building, what I'd like to do instead is just to talk a little bit about the Moralis 1 versus Moralis 2, talk about a little bit of how Moralis works, which already I know since you're building on it, you already have some idea, and then give a very brief demo, and then spend the majority of our time talking to you about how things are going, any questions you have, any pain points that you have run into, or just any general questions you have, maybe about setting up backends or interfacing with databases or with other backend systems, or just even some of the gameplay problems or ideas that you have or run into. So any questions that you have about Web3 gaming, I hope you'll bring those up at that time. So again, I'm just going to spend a few minutes right now just walking through a couple things, and then we'll get into the open discussion. So a little bit about Moralis. Moralis, of course, as you know, we've been in business for over a year now, a year and a half, and we have focused on building teams for developers. And what we're wanting to do is to get highly focused on everything that's Web3. And in the gaming space, that's Web3 gaming, whether that's using tokens in-game, doing in-game mintings, pre-mintings, doing authentication and validation of user identity, and so on. And so what Moralis offers your games is the ability to interact with basically any gaming system and add Web3 functionality to that. And so again, the focus is identity, streaming data. As you know, as we've discussed many times in the past, it can be very difficult and a lot of work to connect from one system into an RPC node, and then gather the data as they're coming into the stream. Of course, there's a lot of data coming in, and we want to be able to search those data or interact with them live. So Moralis streams are going to offer the ability that we have today with that we're also calling webhooks, that we've called webhooks in the past. Or maybe with the Moralis 1, you have used live queries and you have watched data coming in as it is being changed. So live streams are basically the same thing for your on-chain events. So when someone mints a token, when a transfer occurs, when the transfer is complete, any of the events that are thrown by the contracts that you subscribe to, you can get those live data as they happen. Of course, we have our Moralis APIs, the Web3 APIs for looking at NFTs, at account information, all the token information, whether it's historical or live as it's happening through our Web3 API. That, of course, is a cornerstone of the Moralis product. I think that's one of the coolest things that we offer is all those indexed data that come off a chain. And that can be any chain that's an EVM or Ethereum-based chain. So whether it's Polygon or BSC, Arbitrum, Avalanche, Cronos, as is the center of our hackathon. And Moralis gives you the ability to do multi-chain apps seamlessly so that your user doesn't even know that it's happening. So let's take a point in the future of gaming. This is something that I don't see anyone doing yet, but I see this coming. And that is, I have an open metaverse. Say, for example, if you've ever worked with VR chat, it's kind of an open space. You can kind of build your own world, but it's still all one place. What if you had something like a VR chat where you had a character that was defined on Polygon, and that character was going to wear armor that was defined on BSC, and you're going to have a spell that's on Arbitrum, and a sword that's on Polygon? You could do that and do it seamlessly so the user doesn't need to know that the pieces are coming from different chains. So I think that is coming soon, and Moralis is a perfect tool for doing that kind of cross-chain gaming development. And that's something we don't see yet, but I definitely see that coming. Okay, and then the Moralis SDKs. So what's really cool with Moralis too is that you can use the individual pieces as they are. You can call them directly. However, there's a lot of setup that has to be done. And the software development kits, whether you're using the JavaScript software development kit or the C# development kit, each one of those wraps all of the Moralis functionality in a way that makes it very simple to use. And so that is one of the things I'm going to do a very quick demo of. But before we do that, some very important links. I want to make sure to share these. So first of all, I am sure at this point you've already created your Moralis account. But if you hadn't, then go to Moralis.io and create your account. When you look at any of our tutorials, that's always like the first step. And then docs.moralis.io. So I'm going to briefly cover a few things about integrating with PlayFab and Azure from Unity, for example. Pretty cool, huh? Well, we have a full tutorial of that in the docs. And so just real quick, I want to go over there. And so we have, within our docs, we have all of the steps that you need to integrate your Unity game with PlayFab Azure and then Moralis on the back end. And what that gives you is a power to be able to scale infinitely. And because it's Azure, you can pay as you go. And then you'll just pay for whatever Moralis functionality that you use on the back end. So as far as being able to start a game up and be able to scale to however big or how many ever users you have at any one time, it'll happen automatically, and that's kind of cool. So we're going to take a very brief look at that as well. Okay, so let's get into it. I am going to do something that's a little risky. I am going to live code, but again, it's a very simple application, so it shouldn't be too risky. And Philip, if you could just respond live, are you able to see the screen? Is the code big enough that everyone can see it clearly?
Looks good to me. If anybody's having a hard time seeing in the chat, let us know. But I'm going to go ahead and full screen it again to give maximum viewing size.
Very good. Okay, so I started off with a brand new console application running .NET 6. And the only thing that I've added to it is basically I didn't want to self-dox myself with my API key in the public, because I've done that in the past, unfortunately. So I put it inside, I put my API key for the Web3 API inside a text file. And then just as a reminder, you can find that inside your Moralis admin panel if you go to Web3 APIs and then click on copy API key. That's the quick way to find it. But again, if anyone has that, then of course they can use your throughput on the Web3 API. So we don't want to display that. Okay, so I did pre-make that, but the rest I haven't done yet. So we're going to start by importing Moralis. And the way to do that in Moralis 2.0 is through our package manager, through NuGet. Go to browse Moralis. And I'm including pre-releases because we have two versions. So we have the version that still supports the backend parse server. And then we've got, if you do include pre-releases, .NET 2.0 or the Moralis 2.0 is right now 2.05 beta. And I'm just going to add that to my project. All right, so now if I go back to my program file, and I also know ahead of time I'm going to be using my Web3 API, so I'm going to get that as well. Okay, we don't need this. So I'm already getting my API key. Something else. So what I want to do with this application is just to show you how fast I can create a quick console app that, again, you could use in your own REST service or in a daemon that's running on a server. And you'll see that the code is basically the same as it is inside the previous Unity SDK. So I want to add a wallet address, and I'm using my chain list ID or same chain list object that's inside the Web3 API that you've probably seen in the past. And I want to use the mainnet. So I'm going to say chain list ETH. Okay, so I need my wallet address. Go back to my browser here. And I want to make sure I'm using a mainnet one, because that's where I've got some NFTs and stuff that will show up. Copying that to the clipboard. Okay, so we're ready to go. So what I want to do is I'm going to use, since this is an asynchronous process, I'm going to do a task run. And in here, I just want to see. We want to, let's start with our balance. All right, so I'm going to use my Moralis client, and I want to use my Web3 API and my account. And again, if you go back to your Web3 admin panel, everything inside Web3 API, the endpoints line up with that, the operations line up, parameters line up. So you can get all that information there, or of course, Code Hints gives it to you in Visual Studio. All right, so basically what I need to do is I want to get my native balance. And so I need to pass in, as a minimum, my address and my chain. And then I want to display that. And honestly, we should be doing some checking to make sure that it's not null and stuff. But I guess for purposes of this, we'll risk it. And let's see, I want to do balance is val.native token balance. So we've added with Moralis 2.0 some extensions. so that instead of just showing the balance, which is in we, if I showed this, it would be in we, I can actually show native token balance. And what that does is it takes the we value, the decimals that come back inside the balance object, and then it converts it into the full token. So if I were to go against Mumbai, of course, the value would be in Matic. BSC would be BSC, etc. Since we're going against ETH, this would be the Ethereum. Okay, so let's see if this works. And it is running slow, probably because I am live streaming. It's one of the cool things about live streaming is you never know what's going to happen.
That's absolutely right. It's like an adventure every time when we're coding live. I have the same experience as myself when doing DeFi demos. It's always the time when you're doing it live that you'll have a network issue.
Yeah. Okay, usually this comes up like right away, Phil. So this is funny. This is taking so long. All right, I'm going to stop it and debug it just so I can see what's happening here. Okay, it was taking a while to close, so probably should have done that.
Sometimes we unveil additional tidbits as we debug the steps we're showing anyway. So I would consider this time well spent.
What happened? Okay, something funny is happening. So again, oh, that's odd. It restarted. Why did it restart? Is this because it didn't start completely? This is funny. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, let's try that now. All right, so now we can see something's going on. One of murders. Oh, okay, good. Again, live streaming, making mistakes, breaking things. So what I didn't do is I captured my API key out of the file. I never told Moralis what my API key is. That's an important step. Okay, so what I need to do is
need to hide your screen for a second here, David?
Nope, no.
Oh,
that's where I get the API key.
Perfect.
So I need to go to my API client. So like I said, this is really, when you're live, you know.
Oh, absolutely. Right, no, so no one can doubt that this is live at this point. No pre-recordings in these live workshops.
All right. There we go. So I just had to tell Moralis ahead of time what my API key was. And I guess since I'm here, I'm going to talk a little bit about connection data. So for other things, there's other connection data objects that you can put in here that you may need from time to time. You can add headers if you need to, the master key from your Moralis server if you need to. If you're going to change any of the URLs, you can change those. Normally, you don't need to do that, though. The only thing you normally need to set if you're using Web3 or Solana or authentication is just to set the API key. All right, so let's try that again. There we go. All right, so it says I have 0.074 ETH, and if I go back to my wallet, and go down to mainnet. Oh, that's telling me Matt of Mumbai. Not even on mainnet. Bill. Here we go. Okay, and so that matches. So 0.0743114, and our output was basically the same. Okay, so how are we on time? It's 20 minutes after already. Okay, so this is
Did you have
getting
more to
tight.
show, or are we ready to move? Well, we've got as
Well,
much time as you want, David.
okay. I was thinking about like also listing out NFTs or something as well. Um, but I might come back to that if anyone wants me to do that at the end, because it's basically the same process. We just call the Web3 API .account .get NFT and then pull the NFTs back, and then we can list them. So I'm going to actually move ahead at this point. So I'm hoping that there's going to be a lot of questions afterwards. But if people are interested and want to see me just pull up the NFT list real quick, we can do that as well. The other thing I really wanted to make sure we got to was to show the connection between Unity, PlayFab, Azure, and Moralis, because I think that's incredibly powerful. The best thing about that, though, is that if you're going to develop in Unity, you can develop your game in Unity, use the same backend. You could develop a game in Unreal Engine and use the same backend. You could develop your game in Babylon JS and use the same backend. If you wanted to use AWS GameKit instead of using PlayFab, you could. But this demo that we have on documentation at the moment is for PlayFab, so that's what I wanted to show real quick. Because again, I don't want to self-dox, I'm not going to show the PlayFab setup, but that is inside of our documentation, how to do that. So make sure to read through that. Okay, so again, I have a Unity application, and we have the authentication kit, and we've modified it to show some the login that is required by PlayFab. But PlayFab also allows us to play as a guest, and so that's kind of what we're going to do today. And so I want to start with the Azure side. So we have the 4 layers. We have Unity 3D, and we have PlayFab, Azure, and Moralis on the very back end. Development kind of goes the opposite direction. So we create our Azure functions, and we have those so they'll talk to Moralis. And then we basically create a link to our Azure functions in PlayFab, and then wire up Unity to call PlayFab. So again, all of this is inside that documentation. The details are there. PlayFab was originally designed outside of Microsoft as by a third party, and then was bought by Microsoft. So yes, you will need accounts in both. Okay, so let's look at Azure, and it's fairly simple, though it may look a little bit more difficult. But the basics of it, if you look at our code here, where we're basically just calling Moralis Web3 account, get native balance. We're basically for our get native balance here, we're doing the same exact thing. So what I have here are 5 different functions, and I'm using Visual Studio Code, and I've imported the resources for Azure into this. And again, that detail is inside the documentation, inside the tutorial. I have my variables for my Moralis URLs and API key inside the environment variables of Azure. And so I can pull those out here. Again, the details are in the tutorial. And then I've got 5 different methods. So first, the authentication validation. If you remember in the Unity API, we had to make a call to Moralis to look at the signature. So for this, we're basically getting a special message from Moralis that will be signed, and then we turn around once it's signed and send it back to Moralis to be validated. So it's basically kind of the same steps as previous, just a little bit more expanded to give us a little bit more control over the user wallet identification. So we've got our challenge request where we get the message from Moralis that we're going to sign. Then we send it to the user back through PlayFab. It comes up in Unity, it gets signed, and then it gets sent to verification, and then we're validated. And then what the Unity application is going to do is to call the other methods. And so I've added get native balance. And I know I'm going really fast here. I'm sorry about that. Again, this is all within the demo in the tutorial. So get NFTs, and then also get ERC20 tokens. So most of this code just has to do with dealing with PlayFab and integrating with PlayFab. So what I need to do is to tell PlayFab, hey, and tell Azure to expect certain parameters inside my request. And I take those and then I can pass them into my Moralis functions. So you'll see before, when I did the get native balance, I had address and chain. So again, I'm just pre-telling Azure, hey, you're going to expect these two parameters, address and chain. And of course, I do some checking to make sure that those are not null and that those addresses were passed, that those values were passed to me. And then I call my function. And of course, I'm adding some validation around that as well, because I want to make sure that because I'm deploying this up to Azure, that I'm not going to take the same risk I just did in that console application, because of course there are more consequences. Each of these calls cost money, and etc. Okay, so I can use code to build this and then upload it to Azure. So you're probably asking at this point, well, David, when you did the console app, you used NuGet Package Manager to pull in Moralis. How do I do that here? Again, the details in the tutorial, but it's pretty simple. You just go to your project, and you just have a package reference that you include, and then you tell it which one to do. So when I created this tutorial, we were still on 0.4. And you'll notice that before in the console app, I did 0.5. Okay, so again, we create our functions here. We upload them to Azure. And so within Azure, I've created my application, and I go to configuration. I add in my specific Moralis information, my URLs, my API keys. And we're spinning. Yay. Okay, so again, I'm not going to show these because I don't want to self-dox, but you can see that these values that I'm pulling from those methods are actually in my environment variables. And then the functions themselves are here. And the cool thing is this gets populated automatically from Visual Studio Code, and I can come in and I can actually test these live. Now, the PlayFab ones are a little bit more difficult to test because you have to pass in a PlayFab object in the request body. So it's a little bit more difficult to code and test, so I'm not going to do that live at the moment. But I can monitor and I can see the calls as they're made, and that way, if there are any errors that occur, then they'll show up. And so I can go in and I can actually look and see my different logs that are put off by each method. Okay. And then these also have a specific address that I can copy and copy them into my PlayFab functions. So in my PlayFab account, I also create an application. And within automation, I define my Azure functions. And so each one of these I had to add just by going register function, and I tell it where in Azure that function is located and the name of it. So this is the name that gets called from Unity. And again, I'm rushing this because of time. The details are in the tutorial, and please ask any questions when we're wrapped up. So the final step is for Unity itself to be able to talk to PlayFab. So if you go to Package Manager, you can load in the PlayFab objects, packages, and then, of course, put your information in. And again, I don't want to show that because I don't want to self-dock myself. So within your code, you'll see it's a little bit more complicated than previously, just because I have to talk to PlayFab, but it's not too bad. So let's go again to showing our native token balance, since that's the one we looked at for native balance. There we go. All right, so I have a PlayFab cloud script object that I want to execute the function. I give it the name. Again, this is the one that we defined here. And we tell it the parameters that we're going to pass in. So again, when we created our Azure function, we told it to expect these different parameters. And we are passing those in via Unity. Okay. This one is currently not being called, so let's go up to the top. All right, I'm just showing NFTs. That's fine. Okay, so if I go to my Unity application again, and I can play this, and I'm going to bring up my wallet while that's loading. Okay, good. Need the wallet to recognize me. I have to tell you, Phil, again, it's funny how long it seems to take when we're doing this live. So I'm going to play as guest. And so PlayFab's basically given me at this point a temporary ID. But I want to associate that with a wallet. So I'm going to connect. And this has worked just like the previous authentication kit. Uses Wallet Connect. I can scan the QR code. And it asks me if I want to connect to the site. I say connect. And then I get my signature. And so this is my long signature, and it's saying, hey, Moralis IO wants you to sign, and it shows me the message. So I'm going to sign that. And just like that, my wallet's connected. And if I go to console, behind the scenes, what's happened is that my show NFTs executed. And I can see that I've got an OpenSea NFT, some crypto NFTs, some, okay, I guess on this account, that's what I've got is the name service and .crypto NFTs, and then this one artsy NFT on OpenSea. Okay. So that was a lot of information in a short amount of time. So hopefully you've got a lot of questions, and I want to open it up at this point to you and give everyone a chance to ask questions. Let me know if you're running into any issues. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, Phil.
We have one of our events coordinators, Siegfried, backstage. Siegfried, did you see any questions in the chat that we can pull up now and go through? Well, let's start with this one here.
Okay. Is there a way to connect with David one-on-one in the Discord page?
I was also going to add to that, are you going to be, maybe not today, but would you be available at all in gather.town to chat with people during one of the hackathon work-togethers? I know I haven't brought that up to you yet, but
I can be.
Oh. There is one right after this call, and there's a link in the description below. So I won't be there at this one, but I'll be back next week. And David, if you have time, I'm sure there's some people who'd love to chat with you a little more there as well.
So the answer is yes. You can connect with me on Discord. Be specific about that you want to talk to me about Moralis, that you're wanting to talk about the SDK or Unity or working with PlayFab, anything like that. Because I get swamped with people wanting to connect. So make sure that when you send a request, to put some text in there that I can see that, hey, so-and-so is trying to contact you. Here's a message. I can say, okay, this is someone through Moralis, and then I'll be sure, disconnecting the phone, like I said, live stream. I'll be sure to try to connect.
Perfect. And that goes for all of us on the team here. If you're reaching out to us, give us a little context when you're reaching out, because we do get a lot of messages, but we want to be available to you as well. So I think that's what David's getting at there. Let him know what it is you need help with right off the bat. He'll be real helpful as we've already seen here today.
Okay, so there's a question here about information off of the
this one here,
the NFTs. All right, so I could actually, well, so the short answer is yes. Yes, you can. So that same call where I listed the name and the token for the token ID of the in the console log, that can also send back. And I know I'm not screen sharing anymore.
I can add your screen.
Also sends back the metadata, and then you can pull, of course, the image right out of the metadata. Now, every now and then you'll run into an NFT that doesn't have metadata, and you'll need to call the Web3 API token. There's a metadata sync call you can call. But there are sometimes with the NFT got miscreated and didn't have an endpoint associated with it, or the endpoint somehow changed. But for the majority of them, when you pull in the NFT information, it will have the metadata, and you can use a JSON parser to pull that information into your game or your other application, and the image URL, just like for any NFT, is there. Okay.
Got another one here. Creating NFTs with custom metadata like properties related to game assets. How would you approach that?
Okay, so there are several ways that you can do this. The easiest way is to use a third party such as Pinata, where you pre-mint your NFTs, you put all the information in there, and then you can use Web3 API to call them up within your game. Then you can also do your transfer within the game from the user. When I first created the Unity SDK, I had a demo app with a little knight on there, and you could claim your NFT mug. So that's kind of an example of how that works. And then David Pradell, one of our YouTube content creators, has created a lot of content that also demonstrates how to create a game and mint NFTs, either pre-mint them or mint them within the game, and then claim them and transfer them to the user. So if you check out YouTube for the Moralis channel, look for David Pradell, and you'll see that he's created several demonstrations of that. And he's a much better, his design is much better than mine. They look really cool.
We'll have David back next week for additional workshops. They might be part of a different event, but he will be back shortly too. Is there, I think we have time for one more question here before we take about a 20-minute intermission prior to the hackathon work together in Gathertown. See if there's another one here. Oh,
yes.
Here we go.
Yeah, so within the NFT, you always have as part of the standard for NFTs, whether you're looking at 721s or 1155s, the token standard has the URL. And so when you are minting your NFT, you set the URL to wherever the metadata is. And then how that's done a lot of times is up to the contract. So for example, I've created some contracts for 1155s that allow me to update the URL because I might change the metadata. And so I'm storing the metadata on IPFS, and I take that URL from the IPFS URL and I save it with my NFT. And then if I update the metadata and then resave the IPFS, I'll have another hash key. And so I'll resave that. And then there are a lot of NFTs where, like, especially like the GIFs, where it'll be set and you don't want it to change. And so the contract's written so it doesn't. However, when you mint, yes, you can store that image or the whole metadata on IPFS, and then you'll get your IPFS URL and set that into your URL for your token during minting.
Perfect.
And again, we have, I think basically all of our NFT minting demos use that method where we're saving both the image and the metadata on IPFS.
Perfect. All right. So if there are any other questions, I encourage you to join David in GatherTown here in about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. And depending on where he wants to stage that, that's up to you, David. There is the auditorium area off to the right. And there's signs there that you follow in order to get to that. Just following the link that's in the bottom of the chat here. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us for this workshop. We wish you the best with your hackathon projects, and we hope that this was helpful in your development. And also, thank you, David, so much for joining us. That was a wonderful workshop and presentation, and I certainly got a lot out of it, and I think others did too. So thank you again.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. Happy building, and I'll see you all in a little bit.